Dak Prescott is back on the practice field for the Dallas Cowboys. What does that mean for the rest of the offense? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. On today's show, we're going to be breaking down the Cowboys' second OTA practice that was available to the media on Tuesday. We got a lot of good quotes from Brian Schottenheimer, George Pickens, so we'll break it all down. But Landon, let's start with this. Dak Prescott not only was present at practice, but he was actually practicing. He was working with the first team. From all reports, was moving around really well. I think there were some fears that maybe Dak would be limited this offseason. Yeah. Maybe he wouldn't be a completely 100% for training camp. But on May 20th, looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the kind of spectrum of where we expected things to be is like anywhere from, maybe Dak will take a couple of snaps to, Dak will take a lot of snaps, but he's not going to take all the snaps with the first team. And I think what we ended up getting from what it sounds like due to reports is that he got all the snaps with the first team that were available. So, and then in interviews afterwards, he confirmed that he's been cleared for all activity as long as there isn't contact. And, as Coach told us today, that we're 68 days away. So set your calendar. We're 68 days away from the first padded practice in Oxnard. So, I think that's about as cleared as Dak can be. So he took basically every snap that was available to him, which is obviously way more than we expected.
And I got some news for you Cowboy fans. That's going to be a non-contact practice for Dak as well. That's why he wears that red jersey. Sure. So it doesn't really matter. But it's fantastic news that he's back. He looked slim. He looked trim, which as he gets older, I'm assuming he's going to need to cut some of the weight to be more athletic, more mobile. It's just not that I was ever concerned about it, Landon, because I wasn't. I know that Dak Prescott works really hard. I know that he was going to rehab from this injury. But it's always a nice reminder, like, okay, he's going to be okay. He's out on the field. This is a good sign that they can continue with their offseason workout. It's just nice to see him out there.
Yeah, and let's be clear, too. I mean, he learned a lot from his buddy Zeke. He knows how to, be an elite angler. He knows how to get the right angle on the photos to make sure that he doesn't got the guys like Marcus Mosher tweeting his.
Well, I mean, the most famous bad angle guy probably ever was Tony Romo.
Tony
right?
Romo, without a doubt. He never learned that lesson from Tony. Tony probably didn't pass that lesson along to him. No. But look, Dak. If there's one thing you don't necessarily have to worry about Dak is him being in shape. I mean, the guy just is a tireless worker. So obviously not surprised that he's in shape or at least not overweight. I actually had concerns just because of everything we had heard that he was too slim. Like that. I wanted to make sure that he hadn't slimmed down too much that. That he did have the armor that he needed to kind of take on hits, but he looks like he's at his normal size and good weight. What was interesting actually was seeing the pictures of him next to Joe Milton, right? Because, listen, you called it, buddy. Like, I mean, how long did it take? One day?
One practice.
One practice. So, but for real, like, our joke was that how long does it take before players take a look at the pic? I mean, fans take a look at the pictures of Joe Milton and start calling for him to take snaps. But seriously though, Milton's a big guy. We know that. Like Joe Milton, is a big quarterback. It was interesting to see though that there wasn't too much of I was expecting a very big difference in like seeing the two of those guys standing next to each other, because Dak is not necessarily a tall quarterback.
No.
He's 6'1", 6'2", 6'2.5" maybe, and Milton is 6'5" plus, and it was interesting to see that they were kind of similarly sized. So But it was interesting to see them both out there.
I think another reason why Dak wanted to be out on the practice field is because he's got a new star receiver. I guess we're going to call him a star receiver. Sure. And George Pickens, who I think he was excited to work with. We got some reports that George Pickens had a really good day, was making some really acrobatic catches, using in the slants. We actually got to hear George Pickens talk in a press conference. We got to hear Brian Schottenheimer talk about George Pickens. And again, we are in the honeymoon phase of this relationship. And I hope it's that way for the next 7 or 8 months. But everything we're hearing out of Dallas is positive regarding George Pickens.
Yeah, I mean, he's on his best behavior, as he should be. And listen, I mean, that's something. Like, because we've had guys in here that, have been in similar situations where they should have been on their best behavior and they weren't. So, I mean, at least he has enough self-awareness to recognize, hey, this is the money-making time and I need to be on my best behavior. He at least has that level of maturity to recognize the situation and know that, acting up at this point in this early stage is going to cost him a lot of money. So I think if anything, the more people talk about this on the outside, the more Brian Schottenheimer is going to spin this into Pickens' ear. Like, hey man, none of them believe in you. No one believes in you. We're here for you. We're here for you. And make it a us versus the world sort of mentality. So at least you are holding him close to you. And he's, turning some of that maybe immature ire outward and not internally onto your teammates and coaches. So we'll see. I mean, obviously speaking of Dak, the Dak interactions are obviously really key here, because as much as Schottenheimer, you're hoping is, and all the energy was the big word for all these guys, right? I was talking about, as much as he's spreading the energy there, I think it's important for Dak and CD to foster the relationship with the young player, make him understand they're all on the same team, literally and figuratively. And I think that they're all on, I talked about it this year. They're all on team. Let's get George Pickens paid, right? Because if George Pickens gets paid, we all win.
Yeah, not only the Cowboys either are paying him because he had an awesome season. He's had an awesome season. That's why he's getting paid. You're getting a comp pick. Dak probably had a good season. You're taking away pressure from CD. Everything lines up for George Pickens to have a big year. And if it's going to happen, I think little things like what Brian Schottenheimer said today. There was a question to Shotty about, hey, how does Dak make life easier on George Pickens? And again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said it's not Dak's job to do that. It's our job to create an environment that makes life easy for George Pickens. So I think they view this as a collective effort. It sure seems like the more that we hear that CeeDee Lamb was kind of the one that pushed for this. Seems like CeeDee's kind of taking George under his wing, which I don't know how that works, because I saw a picture of them standing next to each other and George looks so much bigger than CeeDee. And we talked about this on yesterday's show. Like, one of the things that we like from these OTAs, Landon, is that you just get to see the different body types and sizes. Yes. And when you see CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens lining up, next to each other, I mean, George is significantly taller, not bigger, just taller.
Certainly not bigger, but definitely taller. Yeah, for sure. And you see it. Like, I mean, you and I were talking about it off air, just like how, his size and wanting to see the comparison there, and that he's legit, what is it, 6'3", 190 or so, like, and I think he maybe even has filled out a little bit, but yeah, just to see the height difference between him and CD, when CeeDee Lamb is a lot taller than we all think, but to see CD kind of as a more filled out version of him, it's just like, it's almost kind of like looking at a player on two different parts of his own timeline.
Yeah, and George Pickens rocking the number 13 jersey, which, by the way, he said it's not necessarily a permanent one. He's just waiting until some of the better numbers become available. We'll see. I know there are people that really care about that. Not me. Let's talk about some other players, including Tyler Booker, already into the starting lineup. We'll discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Here's how it works. You post your job, and LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are continuing to break down all the news and nuggets coming out of the Cowboys OTA practice on Tuesday. And one of the things that we saw during this practice, Landon, is that Tyler Booker, the Cowboys' first-round pick from Alabama, they're not messing around. They're not wasting any time. Already into the starting lineup at right guard. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we got a question on one of our shows just a few days ago about, what are the differences going to be between, the Brian Schottenheimer, organization, whether it's practice or OTAs or anything, and the previous administrations. And I think here's a big one, is that they're not necessarily forcing Tyler Booker to earn the starting spot on the offensive line, right? Or the star. I don't know if they were still doing that. I couldn't tell. Did he have a star?
No, but I think that was he did. I think that was a Jason Garrett thing. Like, hey,
yeah, I think that was a Jason Garrett. But as far as actually, McCarthy did kind of carry on a different type of tradition of making them earn the starting spot, even though they're a first round pick at a spot where you were specifically drafted to be in that spot. And I think that's good. I think it just seems like there's like a concerted effort by this coaching staff to kind of treat these players like equals. Like they're not treating them like children, and I think that's part
they're
of
not treating it like a high school team, or a college program,
It's interesting that everyone kind of references that it's like college, but I think that's because college coaches, or at least a lot of college coaches, are a little bit more new school in their methodology of how they coach players, because they have to recruit these guys. It's a much more of a having to earn the right to coach these guys versus the other way around is the NFL. And so their approach to how they deal with these players and stuff like this, right? Where, come on, it's clear that Tyler Booker is the best candidate for the right guard. It doesn't matter that he's a rookie or not.
I mean, you draft, not only that, but we all know, if you're drafting a guard at 12, he is starting in week 1. He is. We don't even need to get into this competition stuff or whatever, or make him sit for a while. You draft a guard at 12, he is starting in week 1. Your first 2 games, Landon, Jalen Carter and the Eagles, Dexter Lawrence and the Giants. We can't waste a rep. It's time to get him ready.
Absolutely. And frankly, beyond being dumb, strategically, it's insulting to the player. It's insulting to the other players that are on the team that have to get ready. So it's just a general, effort by the coaching staff to treat these guys with respect, and then, try to get into a foxhole together. Right. Try to get as a group together to work hard and to achieve a goal, as opposed to, you making me believe that you're good enough to be a starter on my football team. It's these kids don't respond to that kind of coaching. And I think it's good that we have a coaching staff that recognizes that. And I hope that it gets the most out of these guys.
A couple other just little things that we saw. The Cowboys starting offensive line. And again, it's day 2 OTA, so it can always change. But as of right now, it's what you would expect. Tyler Guyton at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, Cooper Beebe at center, Tyler Booker at right guard, Terrence Steele at right tackle. Barring injuries, that's the offensive line combination I would expect in week 1 against Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper and the T's is always how we expected this to kind of suss out.
I like that.
When
Cooper and the T's. It's nice.
and it's one of those things where it's there were 3 or 4 different soft spots where you just weren't sure, oh, could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this combination? Could it be that? And it wasn't even just Tyler. I guess I got to specify. It wasn't even just Tyler Booker that we were, like looking at to see where they were or if they were in the starting lineup. We talked about it a couple shows ago. Was Tyler Smith going to be playing left tackle? What's the solution? Is Guyton being handed the opportunity to re-earn that left tackle job? And it looks like he is. So I do think that this is the smart way to do it. Lean into your youth, lean into the development, give these guys the reps they need to grow into the job, because I do think that, look, we haven't seen Tyler Booker yet, but we've seen the rest of those guys, and all of those guys have shown us something that they can do. They can play good football at the position that they're supposed to be, that we originally pegged them at. So I'm glad that they're giving them the opportunity to kind of earn those spots. Obviously, specifically, I'm talking about Tyler Guyton.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some injury updates and slot corner stuff in a second, Landon, but you actually watched the Brian Schottenheimer, was it the pre-practice interview?
Yeah.
And one of the things he talked about was energy. I didn't get a chance to see, I only got to see some of the clips, but it sounds like from everybody that was either there or listened to it, they're kind of blown away by Shotty's approach to it. And it seems like, and you mentioned the energy, it just seems like there's a lot of excitement around this team right now.
I texted you before we got on the show that, like, if we could create a word cloud of all the interviews of that all the Cowboys gave that were posted that we saw. I would imagine that, I'm sure we're going to get some more interviews that came out of today, maybe tomorrow. That's kind of how they do that. And I imagine it's going to be the same for those interviews as well. If you were to create a word cloud of all the different words that were said during those interviews, the biggest word in that word cloud, without a doubt to me, would either be what you said, which I think was culture, right? Mm-hmm. Or energy, without a doubt. Everyone was talking about the energy that not only that the practice had, but the energy that Brian Schottenheimer brought. Just, the way he's and not even just the players too, like the commentary from the media folks that were there. They were talking about how Schottenheimer was dabbing up every single one, like that if someone put the over under on the number of players that he dabbed up, like at 80, right? So the guy like just went around and was like making an effort to, again, that's another thing, just making an effort, right, to connect with every single player offensively and defensively on the whole team. And Dak Prescott actually addressed this. They talked to him about it. They're like, we've had other coaches, we've had other times when we've talked to you about culture. We've heard this before. Why is this any different than it was before? Why is this any different than the other times that you talked about how good the culture was? And Dak brought up a really good point, is that I think this is him speaking, when I was speaking about this before, I was speaking from my own experience on the offensive side of the ball, maybe not as much on the experience of the defensive side of the ball. I think it's really important that he brought that up, and that Dak also brought up that Schottenheimer is doing it the right way from the top down, and that he's including the defense. He's not, just, going to the offense. He's making bridges to all the defenders. And that's the thing that's really impressive to me too, is his kind of relationship with Micah Parsons. And you saw a little bit of that, the golf outing streaming, which, may have felt like a waste of time for a lot of people. But honestly, one thing I got out of that was just the relationship these players already have with Brian Schottenheimer, and how different that is for almost anybody else. That, we have a brand new first year head coach who has a preformed relationship with all the leaders on this team. Like, it's a unique situation that Brian Schottenheimer is in, and I'm interested to see how it folds out, because so far he's passed every single test with flying colors.
Yeah, usually the only time you get this is when like an interim head coach is hired to be a full-time head coach. Now, those have not worked out particularly well, but this is a different situation than that. This is somebody who's been up in the booth for a while, or up in the box, and now he's down on the field, going to be calling plays. We'll see how it works out, but again, the vibes are good right now going into June. Later, let's talk about some of the guys that were injured, but we're at practice on Tuesday. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Landon, let's run through some injury updates. So Trayvon Diggs not at practice as he continues to rehab from his knee injury. No Micah Parsons. It sounds like he was there on Monday. Going to be probably kind of on and off as he navigates this contract stuff. Sam Williams and Donovan Wilson working on the cords, as well as Savon Ravel. Any big takeaways for the guys that weren't practicing yesterday?
Yeah, let's go through these a little bit. Micah, it sounds like he showed up to yesterday's practice, which it sounds like yesterday's practice was more strictly team building, that they were doing some games and stuff. And Schotty actually called Micah personally and said, "Hey, I need you here for this part." And so Micah showed up, which I thought, again, great sign, right? Great sign that he has that kind of relationship with Schotty, that, he'll answer the call, he'll show up. And again, Micah, just showing more and more leadership. Yeah, he's dealing with a contract situation. It's going to make things a little bit difficult here, but he's doing what he needs to do to kind of show support.
He's around.
The new coach. He's around. He's a part. He's not. This feels very different than the CD Lamb, holdout situation, right? So, and I will say that the tenor and tone of both sides seems different.
It feels more. It's not as negative as the Dak thing, where there was a lot of a lot of hard feelings between Dak's agents and Jerry and Stephen Jones. Big words are hard.
Animosity is tough.
Yeah, animosity. There you go. But like that, Dak was at practice. He never missed anything. Yeah. It feels like Micah's taking a similar path.
Well, especially since they probably already have a deal in place and they're all just stringing this along for media reasons. But whatever.
There are people alluding to that, by the way.
I mean, listen. I've never changed my stance on this. So I think that I think it's, again, positive vibes all around. And I think that, again, the stress of how excited everyone feels about being around and about being in the building and being with each other. I think Micah couldn't just stay away for all of that. And I think the fact that he came in for the kind of team building aspect, today was very early days install stuff that he, this is the kind of stuff that if you're going to miss time, it's probably okay to use this as your holdout day. So, but good that he is around when you need him.
Wanye Thomas was playing in the slot. I want to mention this. Even with Donovan Wilson out with some undisclosed injury, I did want to bring this up. Maybe Wanye Thomas is a potential slot option. Izzy Makamu was working in the slot as well, as was Deron Bland. And I believe Deron Bland was talking with Clarence Hill about this after practice, and Bland said he feels more comfortable on the outside, but he's open to playing in the slot. But he also mentioned to Clarence that, hey, he's going to have a chat with the Cowboys about this because he's afraid that playing in the slot might hurt his contract down the line.
Clarence said that, and Deron goes, kind of, okay.
Well, I don't think it should be a knock on any cornerback anymore. No. If you're playing, just like it should be like a receiver. But CeeDee Lamb plays a majority of his snaps in the slot. It shouldn't be a knock on him. But I do understand how there are teams out there that won't pay a certain price unless you're an outside corner. So I do understand the rub at least a little bit.
Deron Bland is the all-time leader in pick sixes in a season. I don't know if anybody remembers that or not.
All from the outside, though.
That's what I'm saying. All from the outside. I don't think that anybody needs any more proof that Deron Bland can play outside corner.
I know.
He has. And so this just doesn't apply to this situation as far as I'm concerned. Can we talk about some of the other injured guys?
Sure, go ahead.
I thought that we saw pictures of Sam Williams for the first time in a while, right? And he does look like he's bigger. He does look bigger than the guy that we saw in 2023, right? So I am interested to see what that means for him being deployed kind of more on that strong side. And we also heard a little bit about Marshawn Nealon kicking inside a little bit on some pass rushing. So maybe he's the guy that they may reduce down inside to rush from that 3 technique.
He feels like the new Chauncey Golston to them.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly way more explosive and certainly more, I would say, of an outside guy than an inside guy. Whereas I felt like Golson was the reverse. So, but definitely in usage wise, certainly possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that Sam Williams, yes, they're trying to bulk him up to be more of a run defender because they have Micah, Fowler, Ezeraku, who are all, I don't want to say undersized because that's not the right word, but smaller frame guys, right? Like those are your up the field edge rushers. I think they're going to rely a lot on Nealon, Sam Williams, and then hopefully Peyton Turner, who the Cowboys
Yeah.
signed as an unrestricted free agent, to be those guys that can hold up against the run. Sam Williams being out on the field, coming off the torn ACL, great sign.
Yeah, him and Revel were both on the cords, so that's a good sign. Like that means they're, that they're within striking distance of at least, if they start out on pup early, that they'll come off of it pretty quickly once we get into training camp.
Last note before we head out: Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams were working as gunners on punt team. Now that could just be as simple as, hey, that's OTAs. We're just screwing around. Go line up outside. But I wonder if it wasn't. Like, I wonder if they're just trying to find ways to, or these veterans are trying to find ways to contribute because this is likely their last chance, both of these guys, to make an NFL roster.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got that note from Mike Fisher, and as Mike Fish said, it's a situation where they're trying to vie to be running back one, but they're also trying to make the team. You know, and so like I think there is a world in which if they aren't the primary back and they're on this team, they're probably going to need to find a way to play some special teams, which is not something that either of them have probably done a ton of.
No, and I think of like Miles Sanders, who signed like a 1 year, $1.2 million contract. Like, if he doesn't make this team, I have some serious doubts that he'll ever make another team again, especially with 25 running backs being drafted this year, a bunch of quality guys in undrafted free agency. Kind of now or never for both of these guys. We'll see if they can carve out a role on special teams to make this roster. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. We'll continue to break down all of the OTA notes and nuggets coming out of Cowboys camp this week, so be on the lookout for that. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.